Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pam Laricchia, unschooling mom and author, bringing you interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free Exploring Unschooling ebook, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Laricchia, and this is episode number 25 of the podcast. It's the 21st of June, 2016, as I record this intro. In this episode, I talked to Jennie Gomes about deschooling. She and her family have been unschooling for a couple of years now, and we dive deep into her experience. We talk about the fears she had when she began unschooling, her relationship with her spouse and how it's changed, the challenges of moving away from control, what the hardest and the easiest parts of the journey have been so far, and much more. There are so many great tidbits, and one of which I wanted to share with you. It's Jennie's observation that it seems like unschooling gives her permission to say yes to her children. She talks about how it's funny that we need that, but we are so trained to be in control all the time, to do things the, quote, right way. But through deschooling, Jennie has learned saying yes creates great opportunities and fun experiences that we could never have even first imagined. So consider this your permission to go and have fun with your children, all in the name of unschooling. As a quick update this week, I wanted to let you know that the Childhood Redefined website has been updated with information about our next Unschooling Summit. It will be held in Bethany Beach, Delaware, October 19th to the 21st. I also added feedback from those who came to the first summit in May, so you can read about their experience in their own words. Registration runs from August 1st to September 16th, and if you'd like to not have to remember those dates, on the registration page you can sign up for the announcement list, and we'll remind you when the time comes. You can find all the information at childhoodredefined.com. This week, I wanted to share a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. Our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world as being able to remake ourselves. A few times in our conversation this week, Jennie mentions the internal work that she's been doing as part of deschooling. It's a lot, isn't it? And through that work, that process, our self-awareness steadily grows. Understanding ourselves helps us to take that beat in challenging moments and choose how we want to respond, rather than reacting without thought. We are growing and learning how to make choices that bring us closer to the person and the parent that we want to be. In Gandhi's words, remaking ourselves. And that in turn helps us build stronger connections and deeper trust with the important people in our lives, our family. And therein lies the real greatness and beauty of our unschooling lives. And now, on to the interview with Jennie. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Jennie Gomes. Hi Jennie.
Hi Pam.
Jennie is mom to 3 young children ages 6 and under, and they've been unschooling for a couple of years now, or more specifically, deschooling. Jennie and I have chatted on and off over that time, and she is actively working to shed the control and punishment she grew up with and not pass it on to her kids. I'm really looking forward to diving into her deschooling experience with her. So, Jennie, can you share with us a bit about you and your family and how you first came across the idea of unschooling?
So, hi Pam. Thanks for having me. I'm honored that you've asked to interview me. So, thank you very much for that. We started unschooling, or I came across unschooling as I was looking to try to find alternatives on homeschooling. So what happened was Madeline went into JK and she was fine. You know, she's always been a strong little girl. And so we didn't have any of the crying when we dropped her off and things, but she was always observing and she was always paying attention to what was going on around her. And I was going back to work. So the decision was obvious. You know, we'll put her in JK and we'll see, you know, where it goes from there. I had never thought about homeschooling or unschooling at all at the time. And, you know, I had only heard about it because I'm in the Lesh League and I had a friend of mine who homeschooled. And I thought, it's just not for me. I don't think I'd ever do that. But dropping her off at school that day, I was really sad because I wasn't going to be spending any more time with her. And so I was really sad about that because I love spending time with her. But I went along with the process. And so dropping her off that day in JK, I saw her kind of take everything in and what was going on around her. We'd always practiced attachment parenting, and we always had very good open communication with one another. And she was good. She was good. She walked on in there, and, she was like that from the time she started until, June. And then in June, she started to say things like, you know what, Mommy, I don't want to do what everybody else does. I want to do what I want to do. And when I'm sitting on the carpet, my body wants to move, but my teacher's telling me that I have to sit down. And so I'm confused about what I have to do. And this was coming from a 4-year-old, very,
Wow.
in tune 4-year-old. When I started to hear these things, and then when I went to meet with the teacher, she would say things like, well, she isn't writing her name. And I thought, well, it's not important to me that she knows how to write her name at 4. And it just felt like we were just not on the same page. And I was hearing these things from her. And, I was very quick to, to take that and put that little kernel in my brain. And then that's when I started to look into homeschooling and looking at other ways of, having her not extinguish her fire, not extinguish her flame, her passion, because she's always been a passionate little girl. So I was due with my 3rd in October. So I thought I won't enroll her in SK because JK and SK are optional here in Ontario. Which means you don't have to enroll your kids in either. So I kept her at home for SK, and it was wonderful. We had a wonderful time. We spent time together, which is, I love spending time with my kids. So we spent lots of time together, and I watched her flourish. I watched her creativity come out, and I watched her experiment. And it was just a no-brainer from there on in. I was just going to keep her with me. Grade 1 came around, and I thought I won't enroll her in grade 1, and we'll just, we'll take it year by year. And that's where we're at now, so that she would be at the end of grade 1 right now. Yeah.
Oh, that is so interesting. I love that story. So it sounds like, the biggest concern was what you were hearing from Madeline, right? And how you saw her and school fitting together or not.
Exactly. And actually, another quick story, she expressed in December an interest in going to school because she's been watching a lot of shows about kids going to school. And I think she likes the drama of it. She's a big people watcher. And so I thought, okay, I said, okay, we can go on a tour. So I met with the principal. I went on a tour of a school. And here she is, and I'll never forget her. She decided to wear this beautiful long skirt, a velour skirt. And so it's dragging down to her feet. And she's got a white tank top on, and she decided to wear these beautiful butterfly wings. And she's got these butterfly wings, and she's walking down the hallway with this principal, and I'm standing behind and I'm watching her. And she's got this beautiful spirit and aura, this untouched purity as she's walking down this hallway, and she walks into this classroom, and all these kids are sitting on this carpet, and she's watching them. And they're, have you seen grade 1s in a classroom? They're all kind of jittery, and they're kind of moving around, and the teacher's kind of trying to tell them to, look over here, I need your attention over here. And she's teaching them money. So she's teaching them about toonies and loonies. And Madeline, we had just gone to Joyride, and Joyride is a bike park here in Markham. And they had her behind the counter, taking money from the customers and selling them chocolates because we go there all the time. And so she had learned about, toonies and loonies and what change she needed to give back and things like that. And so she was in there for about 10 minutes watching the classroom. And then she walked out and she looked at me and she goes, I don't want to be here, Mommy. And that was the end of that, and I plan to take her back if she wants to, I'm always open to that. But it was a big, eye opener for me, that moment too. Yeah.
It is beautiful. I was wondering what some of your bigger fears or uncertainties were as you first began unschooling and what they look like now after a couple of years.
My biggest uncertainties, I think, especially having small children where I'm catering to a lot of their needs. Mommy, can you get me orange juice? Mommy, can you get me that? I was always worried that I might not be doing enough for her. Because, I was always catering to the other two. I have three small children. And so, and even for my son too, when I had a newborn and I had to just sit and nurse for, long periods of time, I had a carrier too, but you can only do so much. And so my worry was that, was I doing enough for her, and can I support her as much as she needs me to? Can I reach into those areas of uncomfortableness and work through that in a way to help her in whatever she needs me to help her with, even if it's really uncomfortable. Even if I can just, stand back without judgment and just help her through it. So that was my biggest concern going into it, I think. And how it looks like now, I've realized, and I'm still learning, obviously, as she gets older and she starts being exposed to more, I'll have to go deeper, I'm sure. But what I'm noticing now is that I feel like I really can't, there's nothing I can't get through without taking a moment to pause and breathe and think in my head, it's going to be okay. I trust her completely. Nothing is an emergency, and we'll get through this together. So through these little mantras in my brain, stop first, quiet. I've learned to be quiet, and that was really hard. I've learned to be quiet. So when she comes to me with something that sounds completely, outstanding right now for a 7-year-old, I'll stop first, before I used to react. So I'll stop. I'll take a moment, I'll think about it. And she knows now too, mommy needs a moment. And then I realize that, there's nothing that we can't get through. So we'll take it day by day. And that's how I've been going on.
I remember that time too. I mean, it was so much about finding like the mantras or the messages, the little things that worked, that connected with me so that I could use them. So I try something, see how it worked. And then it's been a couple years now. It's really about the experience, isn't it? Just seeing those work that time. Oh, look. Maybe not the next time, but then they worked again and they worked again. And it's building up our tool set that helps us deal with all those little day-to-day things. And
exactly.
And you were talking about how she knows to give you that moment now. Our kids learn that, don't they?
They do.
My kids know when they, I need a couple of minutes to adjust to a big change in plans, or just like something out of the blue. And they know to come and say, hey, Mom, I'm thinking this, take a minute. Even now, because this is about the root of us as who we are, right? I mean, we're going to change and grow, but we are still, there's some things that are still us, our personality. Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. So I was wondering a bit more if we could talk a bit more about what your family's move to unschooling looked like. I was wondering if maybe if you tackled a couple of changes at a time around issues, or whether you tried across the board making changes. Have you talked, your daughter obviously knows that going to school and not going to school is an option. Or maybe has the shift been more internal to you, like just you taking these mantras and using them to change how you respond to your kids and the expectations that you have of them?
Well, I learned about unschooling right on, and I came across your website first, Pam, when I was looking into homeschooling. So for some reason I thought, SK, we'll leave it as is, she'll go through, I'm not going to put any curriculum on her, we'll just kind of go through the days as usual. But for some reason I thought when she hits grade 1, or what would have been grade 1, I feel like I need to introduce some workbooks,
Yep.
And so that was my mindset. I thought, I'll keep it easy, I'll keep it flowing, and I'll introduce a couple of workbooks. So, we went away for the month of September. We come back in October, and, I've got fresh, brand new workbooks, and I have them out. And, I thought we'll have a routine. We'll do, in the morning, we'll do a couple hours, and then in the afternoons, we'll have it easy. At first, she was excited about the workbooks, but then they quickly became very tedious and very hard, and she didn't want to do them anymore. And then that's when the light bulbs went off for me. This isn't going to work. She's, I'm putting a flame out here. I'm forcing something, and anything that's forced and doesn't feel natural to me, doesn't feel right. I don't want to challenge, I don't want to go into a battle with her every day. I don't want to challenge her every day in this way. I want to challenge her in other ways, and I want to see her smile. I don't want her being angry at me for trying to force her to do some workbooks. And so I gave that up. I think it was in November, a month. And so I started to go back into unschooling again, and look at unschooling. And so up until that point, I still had, controls on screen time, controls on food, on that type of thing. And food, it was really just, sweets, like no sweets until after dinner, all this talk, right? And so at that point was when I started to read more on your website and Sandra's and all the wonderful information that's out there. And I looked introspectively at myself and, what I wanted for my children. And that's when I slowly started to let go of controls and providing abundance for my kids. And that has been hard. But it has also been so rewarding in so many ways. Just last week, actually, I had a friend over for dinner, and the kids were playing, and they were running around, and I don't preach too much to people about unschooling. When they ask, I answer. But for this one particular friend, he's a big supporter of it. He loves it. He doesn't have his own kids yet, but he's an open mind. He thinks with quite an open mind. And I said to him, look at this. And he said, what? I said, they're playing. He said, yeah. I said, do you know what the beautiful thing is about this? And he goes, what? I said, they could be watching TV right now, but they're not. They're playing. Mm-hmm. They've been playing for like 3 hours. And I haven't had to say, no iPad, turn off the TV. They're just doing it because they want to. And how beautiful is that? So it's in these little moments, it's in these little kernels that I take away and I store in my brain, and I think, wow, this is beautiful. This is wonderful.
I know that's when, people understandably completely want to soak it all in fast and get doing it right. But it truly is a journey and takes time, because you need to see it in action you do all that reading, right? Mm-hmm. But, and intellectually it makes sense, but the process of living it and seeing that reality in front of you, to me, that's like the hugest piece of deschooling, because we have these questions. It's like, okay, well, that makes sense. But it's so easy to wonder, well, yeah, that makes sense, but how does it actually work?
It's when you start to see it work, and that takes time. And getting there is a lot of internal work. That's where the hard stuff comes in, right? That's where you kind of have to, and because children are so perceptive, right? Especially my Madeline, who is a people watcher, and she kind of picks up on it. I had to have a very open conversation about her. So the second part of your question was, did I tell them? I wouldn't so much say like they don't know about the term unschooling, but I do always make sure that I tell her that I'm constantly learning. And I'm learning to try to be a better mommy, and I'm learning to try to help her as much as I can so that she, she feels like she can come to me and trust me. And so with her, and my son actually recently, he's on this big learning kick. He's 4. He asks me all the time, is so-and-so still learning? But are they an adult? But are they still learning? So it's important that they know that, I didn't come, I had this change, but it's only because I'm learning, right? I'm learning to be there for them more. And so she accepts that. And so sometimes if she sees me kind of teeter off, she goes, Mommy, you need to start learning again. Like you need to, do a little bit more learning, right? So she kind of, she helps me sort of stay on track too, which is wonderful for me. But at the same time too, having that open dialogue with her, not moving from one, letting go of control and all that stuff from one moment to the next. She knows it's a gradual process and I have to get there. And I'm getting there still slowly, but we'll get there eventually. And I'm definitely a lot further along now than I was at the beginning of my deschooling process.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. And I talk about it. Well, it feels like I talk about it a lot, but our children really are our best guides as to how we're doing, aren't they? And if you, we focus on keeping that open connection and communication with them, and maybe sometimes it's hard to hear when they say you need to do some more learning or however they phrase it. But if we're open to that information, they just so clearly mirror it for us, don't they?
So true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next question. I was wondering how your relationship with your spouse has been during this transition period. Or continuing. Yeah, it's life, right?
Yes.
It goes on and on. I'm sorry to say, I'm still learning.
This is, we worked together. I wanted you to ask me this question because I thought it was important, because I think that during this process, when you're doing it with one person, just yourself, that's hard as it is. But when you're trying to get there with two people that have had these backgrounds and come from these different experiences, and you're trying to be as openly as you can to your children, that provides, a whole new set of challenges, a whole new set of ideas, right? And you're each come with different ways of thinking about things and different ideas. So I think this is an important question. And I've always wondered as well, from other listeners out there. So I thought, why not put me on the spot and then I can kind of try to go there. And so I thought about this answer a lot. And, just from a logistics perspective, my husband isn't much of a reader. And he's very wrapped up in, his career, and which is, wonderful. He loves what he does. And so the kernels that I give him have to be small, they have to be direct. They have to be to the point. So if I find a fantastic article, I read through it and then I'll send it to him and I'll say, this is worth your reading. And for the most part, he will read it. The podcasts have been wonderful in that regard. So he's been, he's on the GO train, so he listens to the podcasts when he's on the train, and that's really helped him too. But at the end of the day, if I can sum up the other stuff, the emotional stuff in a way, is to say that, we've always had conversations. We've always had differences of opinions. What I have found is that unschooling, it's brought that up, but it's really helped to shine a light on it, and it's kind of helped to almost put a bit of more of a focus on what exactly is the driving difference, what exactly it is that we bring to the table that's different. And we used to have these conversations before we had kids, and even at the beginning of our unschooling journey, and you never really knew what exactly it was, this difference, right? But as you start to expose yourself more to helping out your children and, providing them abundance and letting go of control, you really start to look at and examine what it is that bothers you so much on a day-to-day, right? What is it? Where do you even feel these feelings? Do you feel them in your chest? Do you feel them in your head? Where are they coming from? It really forces you to go there in a way that nothing else that I've ever experienced has.
That is such a great point, because when we're having conversations with our children, we want to explain and understand, right? As we start looking at them and understanding their motivations, their personalities and stuff, we find we have to understand that about ourselves. So often before unschooling, it's just, we're busy, we do this, we do this, we do this. We don't really take that time to dig in and deeply understand ourselves.
Right. And so, so I feel like this unschooling journey is what it's really done, is it's really caused us to kind of go deep, figure out what it is that really bothers us. And then that, like once you're there, then you can grow from that. Then you can decide what you want to do with that information, right? And so that's where we've allowed ourselves to grow. And then it's an ongoing process. There's still things that, he does that drives me crazy, with the kids. And there's probably stuff that I do that, I'm sure there's stuff that I do that, drives him crazy with the kids. But, if we can go there at the end of the day, if we can go to those moments and really examine what it was about it that bothered us or why it bothered us, then is where we can start to grow and try to be better for our kids. And it's been a wonderful journey. And I think I know it's certainly brought us closer together. It's forced us to go where places we weren't ready to go to sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's, the end result is like, once you go there with someone, right? It's really certainly brought us closer together for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the realizations, and we're talking years in, this isn't all like, oh, pop, 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 and I get it all. But understanding that my husband's, because judging your spouse's relationship with your children is something that's hard to move away from, right? It's like, oh, look, I'm developing this amazing relationship with my children. I wish my husband could have that. So I found myself, trying to give him tips. I realized I was giving him tips to develop the same relationship that I had with my children. But who's to say, why should I be saying that mine is better? So the realization that my husband and extended family, grandparents, aunts and uncles, they will all develop their own unique relationships with my children. And I think part of it was I noticed that if there was things that he was doing with the kids that bothered me, like you mentioned, I looked to my kids again and it didn't bother them, and then I came to realize it's just different, but it's okay. And then if there was something that he was doing that I noticed was bothering the kids, that would be information I could share with him, because that wasn't about me. It wasn't me in the picture. It was, when you did X or, didn't stop when they asked to stop, did you know, they got upset about it? Or whatever, or when they do this, that means they're upset. So I was able to share more information about the kids. And so it wasn't about me. It was only about me trying to support whatever relationship that they were developing. So that was a big piece for me.
That's lovely. I'm going to use that, Pam. I like that.
Oh, no problem. It took me a while to figure that out. And I know we're... I'll pipe in too. I had the same thing with my in-laws, and when that realization came, and with their aunts and uncles, my sisters-in-law, just support the relationship that they were gonna have, and not negate it or say something to my kids, oh look, she doesn't care what you're up to, just do this and this, but to phrase it and frame it positively, because they're all doing their best. They all want some sort of relationship, right? And so over the years, as the kids have gotten older, other adults are more able to relate to them, to connect and converse with them, and they've got a fresh start because I haven't sabotaged it along the way. Yeah, cool piece.
I love it.
Okay. I think a big piece of the deschooling, and you talked about this a bit when we were getting ready for the interview, so much of it often turns out to be shedding the control and punishment paradigm that we grew up with, right? And as we've been talking about so far, this is definitely a process. It takes time. So I was wondering, when you falter, how do you recover? And then as you dig into that, again, what we've been talking about, have you found a pattern to these kinds of moments? Like, does it happen more often when you're tired, or is it particular situations that trigger it, things like that?
So when I do falter, I've learned to almost give myself permission to, again, take a moment. So, in the past, I always felt like I had to have a reaction. If something happened, if the kids did something, an example, scribbling all over the invitations I'm about to send out. I walk into my, on my desk and I see, the invitations, they're all written out, but there's marker all over them. Okay. So, normally in the past, I would have had a reaction to that. Who did this? Why did you do that? Go down this repertoire of just making everybody feel terrible. Now, I've given myself permission to take a moment. The silence thing comes in again. And it was something that you sent me, Pam, that I read, that you wrote, that was beautiful. This silence, just learning to be quiet. So, I stop, I take a moment, and then my daughter, she knows right away, Mommy, what happened? I need a minute. Mommy needs a minute. I need a minute, Then, I go into the conversation, who did this? Why did we go down this path? But sometimes when it doesn't look that calm, I always ensure that after I've given everybody some kind of time to settle down, settle into their feelings, myself included, I always ensure that I go back and talk to them about it. My 6-year-old and my 4-year-old. My 20-month-old doesn't get into very much trouble yet. But, I always make sure that afterwards I take that time to go to them and either apologize for yelling, apologize for storming out of the room, let them know that I was wrong and that, I should have taken a deep breath, how I could have handled it better. And then we always have a conversation about it. And I feel like it's working, because even when my daughter gets upset now about something and she has a reaction to it, moments later she'll come to me and she'll say, Mommy, can I have a hug? And that's sort of like our reconnecting, like, it's okay. Everybody has, these reactions, and we're working through it and we'll get through it. But, at the end of it, if we can still come together and that I still love you, we still support one another, and we've still got that commitment to one another, then we'll be okay. We'll make it through. So that's how I recover.
Yeah. There was one thing I just wanted to pop in with that. Now I'm going to have to think about that a second. Sure. Oh yeah, it's because I remember those times, because sometimes the emotions can get so big, right, in those moments, and then so you go to the quiet, everybody needs space to calm down, whether and you figure out the kinds of activities or non-activities, whatever each person needs individually, just to move through it. But I found, certainly at the beginning, so often I was like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. That thing stressed me out and I was upset about it. And, now everybody's calm and they're doing X, Y, and Z. So let's just kind of forget that ever happened.
Oh, no.
But the challenge is all the learning is in the part after.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's just going to keep going and going and going if you don't, address it after. Exactly. Yeah, sure, it's nice everybody's relaxed now. Yeah. But let's talk about, so what might it be that we could do next time something happens, finding out what the little triggers were that led up to that. That is where we learn so much about ourselves. Our kids learn so much about themselves, and we learn the kinds of tools for working together so that we can reconnect. You know what I mean? I think it can be so tempting to just not do anything, but it's really important to take that last step.
I think so too. Too.
So have you found any patterns to those moments? I mean, that's just a question about your own learning.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So having 3 small kids, and having to, be the person who, stands outside the washroom to make sure the zombies aren't coming, get the glass of water, get the snack, do everything. It can be tiring at the end of the day. I'm lucky I have a lot of energy, so I manage to keep up with them to a certain degree. My trigger points tend to be things like, loud noises like screaming. My daughter has this beautiful voice and she goes into this wonderful singing, but sometimes it reaches these pitches where it's deafening. It's these like, okay, Mommy can't, if you want to sing that loud, go outside. Mommy, it's too loud for my ears, so it's these constant, it's good because I've learned through time not to be so reactionary and to give them alternatives. And it's only been through working through reading and learning about you and Sandra and reading other people's experiences that I've been able to get there, because in the past, I would have had a much different reaction. So the patterns are really that I have the same sort of trigger points that I see sort of happening, and it's just working through those. And it's amazing because they've gotten less and less. As I've managed to meditate on a lot of stuff, I've been able to, not that I've been able to put up with more, but my kids have also, as they've gotten older, we've sort of like grown with each other. They know what bothers me. So I know that if they're doing something that I know that they know bothers me, it's because they need me or want my attention for something. And so I have to turn, instead of having a reaction, I have to turn to them and say, what is it that you need from me at this moment? Like, I can tell that you're bothered about something. So it's much more of an open dialogue, just because we've learned so much about each other as we've been going through this deschooling process, as opposed to, me thinking, they're bothering me, or they're irritating me, or they're just doing this to bother me. And, it's not like that. It's much more of a back and forth, if I can explain it that way.
Yeah. No, that is, it is amazing. And that's one of the things you learn over time as you're deschooling. You and your children all learn different tools, right? Because now we know that the other person is paying attention. Like your children are now comfortable that you're paying attention, and they don't often have to up their activity, their energy, their noise to get your attention. You're noticing it sooner, more often than not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's been really nice, because so often I find that there's a disconnect. Like when I look at other families or I watch other families, I see that there's that disconnect. You can see the child sort of pulling, right? And the parents having a different reaction, right? They're assuming, because they haven't, and it's amazing to me, like when you stand back and you look at it all, at the end of the day, when the child is most tired, that's the time when they need you the most. That's also the time that you have to do homework if you're going to school, right? If the kids are, you have to do homework, you have to make dinner, everybody's seeing each other. There's so many expectations on those 3 hours before bedtime, 3 or 4 hours before bedtime. And it's the worst time of the day, for small children. Like they're exhausted at that time of day. They've had, so much stimulation all day. They've had to behave all day. They've had to sit on the carpet all day, And so you can see that disconnect happening. Like when you're standing on the outside and you're looking in, and, I walk along in my own world, and I always feel so good because it's like I know this little secret. I don't know if other unschoolers feel like this, but I walk along my day and I feel like I know this secret, this secret to living this beautiful life with my children, that I get to appreciate them every single day, and I get to be with them every single day, and on their good days and on their bad days. And I get to love it all and enjoy it all and watch them grow, and take my time. It can take me an hour to walk to Tim Hortons or to, local corner store, because they're, picking up a rock or picking up a flower, or mommy, look at that bird. And I can take that time, and it's beautiful. And this is the part of unschooling that I absolutely love. And so I walk around my world, but when I'm watching from the outside, I can see this back and forth happening with these parents. And I just want to go to them and say, they just want a little bit more attention, they just want a little bit more of your time. And when they're on their phones or they're reading something because they haven't had time to, do anything for themselves all day because they've been working. It can be overwhelming when you're standing on the outside looking in and you're seeing these interactions between the parents and their kids. It can be really hard.
It's just a warmth you feel, right?
Yeah.
It's just on the inside, it's just like, oh, baby, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And, and you try to explain it, if someone's interested, or, just even when you imagine trying to explain it. And when you look at it from the other parent's point of view, as you said, those hours at the end of the weekday that they get with their children are their children's most difficult.
Yeah.
And then they use that to extrapolate and think, oh my gosh, I could never spend all day with my kid.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
it's just almost impossibly hard to imagine how much different it is when you are living together. Yeah, it's a world. Next question. How do you handle the daily challenges that come with having 3 children of different ages, temperaments, and interests?
I'm still finding my way with this one. Thankfully, we've been deschooling a lot recently. And by that I mean the kids have so they got iPads in January. And so they've been really loving their iPads. Madeline's really been into it. That's been good because I can kind of still nurse. And they spend a lot of time on their iPads currently watching different shows. And Madeline is just devouring shows. She just loves to watch the drama unfold. This little iPad is like a drama show every day, and she loves to watch it all happen. And it's really cool to sit there and watch her reactions and then watch her play out the different characters. Matthew too he loves playing all the games on his iPad. So that's been helpful. The temperaments can be challenging for me because I provide this. I hope that I provide this nourishing environment for them. They really flourish into very different people. And I'm talking specifically about my 2 oldest ones because my 20-month-old, she's still, getting into all different sorts of things. You see a little bit of a personality there, but and she has her own sort of moments, but not too much. Nothing I can't handle at this point. But with the other 2, it's really just in learning and being open to listening to them, sitting beside them as they're watching, learning about them, that I've been able to come up with different tactics on how I'm going to address whatever it is that I can see sort of rolling and coming, making sure that they have snack, that they're fed, that they've had water. Madeline's really sensitive to body temperature, making sure that she's cool. If she's cold, bring her a blanket, little things like that I've been able to pick up. And I'm still learning so much about them all the time, every day. And so I almost try to be anticipatory of what it is that I think that they might need in that moment so that I can avoid, some sort of like dramatic explosion of emotion, which sometimes really can't be unavoidable. Sometimes they just really need that, and they just need me to be there for them while they go through that. And sometimes I might want to, go to the zoo, but they don't want to. So it's really just following their lead and keeping my expectations low. That's really helped.
Yeah. I remember an analogy that used to work for me when my kids were young. Because, your kids are going to get older. They're going to grow. They're going to develop more tools. These moments aren't forever. Sometimes when we get in them, we can get stuck. It's like, oh my gosh, we're never going to figure this out. They're always going to be these angry people, No. But something that helped me, because my eldest had more of the explosive releases, right? Mm-hmm. But as you said, you're starting to notice like Madeline with body temperature and to notice the triggers for them. So my first few years, I was really paying attention to all the kids, but Joseph in particular. And I would notice that it was like he had like a cup's worth of ability in a day to deal with the day, with things going wrong, right? And so it wouldn't necessarily be one thing in particular, but if say, we didn't have PVRs back then or iPads, right? He's 24 now. But, so if a show that he liked was preempted, say it wasn't on when he was expecting it, and then his socks weren't comfortable, and then something else went wrong. It was the accumulation of of challenges to him that day. And after a certain point, the next one was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, right? But if I could tell, we've had 3 or 4 semi-major frustrations in the day, so I came to know that his cup was teetering near the top, right? That it might soon bubble over. And then I could help, as you were saying, help him do something that would help lower the cup. So we would do something extra fun that he loved, or I would spend, extra amounts of time to help lower that level so that if there were a couple more frustrations that came up in the day, he'd be able to work through those, to be able to move through those. So for me, that ended up kind of being one of the things that I noticed. It wasn't necessarily the things themselves. It was how much energy he had to deal with. How many challenges he had to deal with during that day. And so it was managing the frustration level, the level itself. And then that was something he eventually took over. I would say things because you're wanting to share observations too. It's like, oh man, you've had a few things go wrong today. Let's do this, or, X, Y, or Z. And that was something that helped me to better understand, because it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this happened last week and you didn't get mad about it or so upset about it. Why is it today that this thing? So eventually I figured out that it was more a number of frustrations, not the particular frustrations itself. So just being a student of our children, as Anne talks about, but it is there. Our guides, I keep going back to that, observing them, seeing you're helping them learn about themselves at the same time you're learning about them, so that you can help them figure out the tools and the way to manage with the personality that they have.
And just to add to that, Pam, I find that, because I think this is an important piece, I find that even them allowing you to see that takes time. Because, for my 7-year-old, because she only had a few years of me being controlling, and, we did a couple of timeouts and things like that. Because she saw that part of me, it was hard for her to trust me, to let me see her, to let herself be vulnerable with me, to tell me even, that I'm feeling cold or I'm feeling hot or you didn't help me, or, for her to start trusting me again. That came in time but I had to, in order to get there though, I had to continuously be patient with her, because she is my most sensitive one by far. Be patient and be quiet and just be there with her in small little ways that I knew on a regular basis before she really let me in to show me any more. And I think that part required a lot of growing within me, because as different as her and as different as our temperaments are, I knew that I was this little girl, she was right in front of me, but it was almost like she was lost. Like I wasn't connected. We had lost a bit of our connection. And so in order to rebuild that, I had to do a lot of, growth within myself to try to reconnect, and I'm still doing it. This is the whole deschooling process is teaching me. I can see these little kernels, but it's only because I've done the work to try to get her to trust me again, to be into a vulnerable place with me again. And that part takes time. And I could see myself wanting to give up a lot of times along the way because of that thinking that I had in the past of, why can't she just be, or why can't it just be easier? Or why does it have to be so difficult? She's just a kid. I know more. I'm the adult. So, because of that thinking, I had to rest that. I had to quiet that part of my brain and just be with her and trust her. And that's why we've been able to get even the short distance that we have in, almost a year. And hopefully that'll continue to grow.
That is such a great point. Mm-hmm. That trust really takes time to build, mm-hmm. right? And it's our choice. We want to build it. So you're right. It is so much at the beginning, mm-hmm. and forever, our work to do, right? to, because you can say, well, they should trust me. I'm older. I'm their parent. You know, those are messages that easily pop up into our mind. I have an article that I wrote a long time ago, and that's one thing I saw when watching parents out there with their children, you know, that we'd come across in activities, you know, friends, whatever. So often they wanted a good relationship with their child, and they kept trying to pull the child to them.
Yeah. No.
Right? But no, let's do this. Let's do this. Those are all the things a parent imagined, you know, when they had a kid, they would do these things. And your child doesn't, the message that you're saying is, I don't know you. I don't understand you. I have this vision of who I wanted my child to be. You know, come do this with me. Come do this with me. And your trust is so eroded in those moments. And you have no idea how long it will take. And I'm not saying that as in it's going to be a long time. It may or may not. It depends on the child's perspective completely. Go to them. Go to them instead. That's where you build the trust, right? So interesting. One other thing I wanted to touch on, and you spoke of it, the curiosity and the energy of young kids is so incredible. It's just so much. They go. So I was wondering, what are some of the little things that you do during the day to release any frustration that's growing with you and recharge your own energy?
Well, thankfully, I have some help. I have a little bit of help during the day from, you know, in the mornings. And that's helped me immensely to have that. Other than that, like I said, I try to keep my expectations low for the day, and really just follow their lead. You know, not every day has to be, you know, a trip to the museum. Not every day has to be a trip to the zoo. Especially now with my youngest sort of running off, you know, at 20 months old, she's into everything. It can be exhausting because I can't be in 3 different places with my 3 children at all different times. So, you know, we keep the expectations low. We might do like a picnic at the park if they're up for it. If they're not up for it and they just want to stay home all day because we had a really busy weekend, then we do that, and that's okay. I used to have this idea that, you know, it needed to look more like this. And so letting go of all of those expectations has really helped. Sometimes making a cup of coffee in the afternoon, finding joy in little things. I remember hearing something that Sandra said about sniffing the top of your child's head, which sounds, you know, but in the moments when you're feeling exhausted and you can't, you know, you almost like you can't buy, you take that moment and you just look at their hands, or you look at their feet, or you sniff the top of their head. It just recharges you almost. It gives you a little boost, gives you that appreciation that you need to kind of get you through the rest of the day. So I find that really helps. And then the mantras really help me. So Anne Brown mentioned one, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. In one of your podcasts. I repeat that to myself now on a daily basis. That was beautiful. It's helped me so much. So your podcasts and learning, and then reading a lot about unschooling has really helped me find little kernels of things that work for me. And you know, what doesn't work for me, leave the rest. But these little things that have helped me, you know, that I remember, that I store away in my mind, that help me get through the day, that's what recharges me. Yeah. And the sun helps. These beautiful sunny days help.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's finding all those pieces that, you know, so many of us share what works for us, right? It doesn't mean that it's specifically going to work for you. It's kind of a starting off point to brainstorm what it is that picks you up, right? Like you've said, one of Anna's mantras really helps you. The sun picks you up. You know, just gathering information. I found that to be really useful too, in just inspiring me, you know, doing a little bit of reading here and there. I used to get up early so that I could go and read the unschooling email lists and boards at the time, right? So that it's like, oh, that would give me a little extra shot of energy to have a bigger smile on my face, when I greeted them in the morning. And yes, that pause to smell the top of their heads, or to just, because it gets you back into their into their perspective, right? Because their perspective is just always so open and engaged, right? It's even in the most upset moments and in the happiest moments, they're living it all with full energy, right?
So true. It's beautiful to watch.
Entirely engaged, yes.
And I get to be there and watch that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think your point too about having help, another thing we learned growing up, right? We have to do it all ourselves. But no, we don't. Yes, we look to our kids and see what works. If somebody's not working out, you can try something else. I know, especially when they're younger and you're talking about how, you need to get juice and you need to change a diaper and you need to do this. There's all sorts of little tasks that are going on. If you can have an extra set of hands that helps out and that the kids enjoy, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to do it all on your own. That's another cool piece. Okay, so you are now a couple of years into this. So I was wondering, what do you think, or from your perspective, has been the hardest part of your journey so far?
I think the hardest part has really been relinquishing control. That is the number one hardest part. Watching them learn, learning, I have always felt in the back of my mind, I remember going to play dates with Madeline and them having the craft up and saying this is what the craft is supposed to look like, and me just watching her do her own thing and loving it. So I think for me, I've always sort of known that the learning would come, and, watching her develop and create things is more powerful to me than watching her do a worksheet. The hardest part for me is letting her waste all of my spices as she's making something, using up all my flour, all my eggs. Making something, finding the joy in the end result of that when I, got, nothing, when I go to find my vanilla extract and it's all done. So for me, that has been the hardest part for me. And then to the letting go of the control with the food. The screen time, I was surprised. It didn't bother me as much. I thought it would bother me more, but it really didn't. It was the food thing, watching my daughter loves, she loves sweets. And so I've slowly let go of that. And so she's still, she's let go of a lot. She's very picky about the sweets that she likes now, which is interesting to me. But there's still, I'm still working through that, and I'm still working through providing them this abundance, right? Not feeling like it's a waste, but a waste of money, right? That they're going to get spoiled if every time I take them somewhere, they're going to ask for something. And so putting parameters around that, working with my husband too, to kind of, come to something that we're both comfortable with. What that means recently is, having a budget. We'll spend this much, that includes this games and that, and, at the dollar store, at the toy store, whatever. And then if they don't spend that amount for that week, then it translates into the next week. That's what's worked for us. And so finding these little things of what bothers us, or, for more recently, I went to the dollar store and No Frills, which are two sort of like cheaper kind of grocery stores that sell stuff like pretty reasonable prices. And I made, I bought her flour, I bought her eggs, I bought her vanilla extract, like the no name brand. And I put it in a cupboard and I said, here, go to town.
Yeah.
So it's coming up with these little things that work for both of us where I can kind of get past it. Still being able to give her the freedom that she needs. But at the same time, working through it as I'm going through. So that's been the hardest part for me so far. Yeah.
That's a great solution. Yeah. Because you don't want to, give them the freedom, with no consideration, right? There are still realities. There are still things in your lives, if it happens to be money. I mean, I know in a Q&A, I think it was the last Q&A, we had a really cool conversation about money and whether that would spoil children and stuff. So that was really fun to listen to. But there are still realities. Like you said, you can go, she doesn't, it doesn't bother her what brand of flour it is
Exactly.
or how much you paid for it or whatever, you can try to meet everybody's needs. That I think is one of the most creative and fun things about unschooling in the end. It was always such a fun challenge for somebody to have something that they wanted to do and for us to figure out a way to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
That has always been so fun.
It's true. And I remember hearing you say something the other day on a different podcast where you said, sometimes if you say yes, and their idea ends up being so much better. And it's so true. How many times have I been on the other end of that yes and thought to myself, why would I have ever said no to this? For that split second, my normal reaction would have been to say no, but I just said yes and I went with it. And oh my gosh, I'm so much better off. Case in point, yesterday we're getting into the car to drive back home, and my kids are in their pajamas because it's a long drive where we went. And my son says, "Mommy, that sprinkler looks really great." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I go run through that sprinkler?" I said, "Sweetheart, you're in your pajamas." And he goes, and I look at his face and I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And he ran through that sprinkler and he had such a good time for like 15 minutes, just running through the sprinkler in his pajamas and giggling and laughing. And it was wonderful. And, he had to drive home naked, but that's okay. He had a blast and it was wonderful. He didn't care that he had to drive home naked. He loved it. He was like, whatever. But yeah, it was great. And yeah, I'm so glad that, I found this thing that exists, this unschooling thing that exists, where it gives you permission to say yes. Just like when I was breastfeeding, I remember when I went to a first Celeste League meeting and I was saying, she won't nap unless she's on the breast, and it's driving me crazy. What am I supposed to do? And they said, just nap with her. And I said, oh, okay. It's like that thing that gives you permission, It's almost like you need it. It's sad that you need it, but it's true. It gives you permission to enjoy. It's wonderful. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Because we are so conditioned to that's not right. That's not right.
Right.
That's not right.
To come up with all these reasons why you can't. And the reality is you can.
Yeah. And as we've been saying, that's why this, moving to unschooling isn't a quick thing. Oh, they're not going to school anymore. We're done. To see it, to try out these ideas and see them in action over and over, that it just solidifies how awesome.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's
the whole
true.
lifestyle is. Yep. So on the other end of it, what's been the easiest part of your journey?
The easiest part has really been sitting back and watching it all unfold, watching them learn. That's been the easiest part for me. Because it's something I enjoyed, right from the get-go, right from when they were born, watching, having like a first row seat to their lives and watching them grow and watching what they take interest in and, taking the time to notice things and notice what they're noticing. That's been the easiest part for me. To trust them, I think, to trust them with regards to learning has been the easiest part for me. Yeah.
It really is fun to watch them, isn't it? It's incredible. You don't think, you're so conditioned with school to think children need to be told it's time to learn. But just seeing them in action, I sit around in awe, for years, just watching what they get up to and how they tackle it. It's amazing.
Well, just another quick little story about my 4-year-old. He was into watching basketball with my husband because the playoffs are happening right now. So he's been watching all the games with my husband. And so they're having a conversation the other day. And my husband says, so your team, they like opposing teams. And so my husband said, your team has to win 4 more games in order to, win the playoffs. And my son says, okay, how many have they won? And my husband says, they've won 2. And my 4-year-old says, okay, so they have to win 2 more games to win the playoffs. And in that moment, it sounded like any other regular conversation, right?
Yeah.
And to anybody standing on the outside, you wouldn't even really think but here's a 4-year-old doing math, right?
Yeah.
It's just there, right in front of your eyes. No deal, no big deal. He didn't have to sit and write a test. He didn't have to learn it on a chalkboard. He didn't have to sit on a carpet for 20 minutes while somebody explained it to him. He just got it. It's just boom, right there.
Yeah. They just soak up their world
amazing.
Around them. It is amazing. Last question. Do you ever think that you'll feel finished?
I hope not. And I only say that because I've learned so much already. I feel like what I'll continue to learn through going with this process with them. I think as long as they're learning, I'll continue learning too.
I think that's an amazing answer, Jennie.
Thanks.
Because it is really true. I mean, I know that's what I discovered, is that what happened in the end is that we just all settled into learning. Mm-hmm. It was just something that we all do, and we're all growing and changing, and it doesn't stop.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been wonderful so far, so I hope it continues this way for sure.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Pam. It's been wonderful.
Oh, yay. I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your experience, and I loved hearing the stories.
Thanks.
And before we go, I was wondering, where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Facebook would probably be the best. Yeah.
Excellent. Is it okay if I share your Facebook?
Of course. Sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, Pam.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. You can also get your free Exploring Unschooling ebook at livingjoyfully.ca/exploring unschooling. If you'd like to connect, you can also find me on Facebook at Living Joyfully. Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.